Hello, I'm Esther Githu. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. Major test of democratic rule as an estimated 4 billion people in more than 50 nations are set to vote in elections. A legal battle brews in The Hague as South Africa accuses Israel of genocide in its war against Hamas in Gaza. The proceedings begin Thursday at the United Nations top court. And in our technology report, Tanzania is actively working to reduce the gender gap in its rapidly growing tech industry. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. The coming year will be a major test of democratic rule as an estimated 4 billion people in more than 50 nations, almost half the world's population, are set to vote in elections. As Henry Ridgwell reports, the outcomes are likely to shape global politics for many years to come.
Sheikh Hasina won a fifth term as Prime Minister of Bangladesh Saturday, the first in a series of major elections across the world this year. Taiwan will hold its presidential election on January 13th. China's threat to retake the island by force looms over the vote.
We are not only choosing Taiwan's future leaders to decide on the country's future, but also deciding on the peace and stability of the Indo-Pacific region. Is that right?
Indonesia is set to choose a new president next month to rule the nation of 277 million people, making it one of the world's biggest votes held on a single day. Pakistan will hold parliamentary elections in February, where opposition leader and former Prime Minister Imran Khan remains jailed on charges of leaking state secrets, which he denies. Russians will vote in presidential elections in March, and incumbent Vladimir Putin is all but certain to win.
He has control of all of the administrative machinery required to make sure that a crushing vote in favor of him is delivered. And, we get another 6 years of Putin up to at least 2030.
India, the world's biggest democracy, will hold parliamentary elections between April and May, with the Bharatiya Janata or BJP party under Prime Minister Narendra Modi ahead in the polls.
These are very significant elections because there are clearly two opinions in the country at the moment. One is that BJP is polarizing society on communal lines, and on the other hand, there is opinion that BJP is focusing more on national security.
On June 2nd, Mexico is due to hold presidential elections, which could herald a new milestone.
It is also a historic event because of the possibility that, for the first time, a woman will govern Mexico.
The European Union is set to hold parliamentary elections in June, representing more than 500 million people, amid a resurgence in support for right-wing populist parties. Britain is scheduled to hold elections before the end of the year, with polls suggesting opposition Labour Party leader Keir Starmer is on course to end a tumultuous 14 years of Conservative rule. On November 5th, Americans will decide whether to give Democrat Joe Biden a second term as US president or choose a Republican alternative, with Donald Trump seemingly his most likely opponent. Either result will have global ramifications.
In the European context, there are all sorts of fears that, Donald Trump could very, very quickly undermine NATO.
In the coming year, voters are set to wield their democratic power on an unprecedented scale, and the consequences will likely be felt for decades to come. Henry Ridgwell, VOA News, London.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Constitutional Court has declared Felix Tshisekedi the winner of last month's presidential election. After rejecting 2 legal challenges to the provisional results, the verdict paves the way for Tshisekedi to serve another 5 years as head of Africa's largest country. The Constitutional Court validated the incumbent's victory despite independent observers' reports of widespread anomalies during and after the December vote that led the main opposition candidates to call for a rerun and allege a fraud. Logistical mishaps, a last-minute extension of voting, and a murky tabulation process stoked disputes that are threatening to further destabilize the poverty-stricken but mineral-rich nation. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says it is extremely concerned about the well-being of refugees and returnees fleeing the conflict in Sudan, as South Sudan continues to see an influx of new arrivals from across the border. For more on this humanitarian crisis, I'm joined from the UN by VOA UN correspondent Margaret Bishia. Hello, Margaret.
Hello, Esther.
Now, what does the UN say needs to be done to meet the needs of these refugees and returnees?
Well, first of all, the numbers are huge. 500,000 Sudanese and South Sudanese have crossed to South Sudan since the fighting began in mid-April. Just in the last 3 weeks, OCHA says that 50,000 people have crossed and thousands more are reported to be waiting at the border trying to cross into South Sudan. So humanitarians are having a hard time reaching some people in Sudan, of course, because of the fighting. So I think the first and foremost, what humanitarians are asking for is a stop to the fighting. I mean, this is what will end the crisis. And beyond that, they need money, especially to finance the transit centers, because they're helping people helping to transport people who are trying to go to South Sudan. Last year, the UN appealed for over $2.5 billion for the Sudan humanitarian response. They only received $1 billion. And they do need a lot of this money, like I said, for the transport. And some of that is by river and by plane and by bus.
Margaret, we've heard about, looting of humanitarian aid in parts of Sudan. But what are some of the challenges facing the returnees that are still stuck at the border of Sudan and South Sudan?
Well, in addition to basic survival needs, food, water, shelter, fuel, there are security challenges. We have seen reports from humanitarians where civilians have told them about being robbed on the road to the border, women raped. In some cases, there have been reports of people killed. So it's a dangerous journey. And last month, 2 refugees were killed in a UNHCR convoy. They were moving them to a transit site, and armed men attacked the UN convoy. So civilians and aid workers are at risk. And as I mentioned, they're moving people by boat, particularly from Rank to Malakal, and they're moving along the White Nile. And last month, the International Organization for Migration said one of their boats started taking on water in rough seas on the river. It was windy and the boat became leaky. So there are dangers involved in this sort of transportation.
Margaret, many thanks. Thank you for looping us on what the UN is doing about the challenges facing the Sudanese people. Margaret Bishia, our UN correspondent, live for us from New York. Beginning Thursday, South Africa will ask the United Nations' highest legal body to order Israel to suspend its military campaign in Gaza. It's the first step in a case alleging genocide that could take several years to complete. David Doyle has more.
A South African case accusing Israel of genocide in the Gaza war heads to the International Court of Justice for hearings this week.
Please be seated.
So what's it about? And what happens next? The ICJ, also known as the World Court, is the highest United Nations legal body. It should not be confused with the International Criminal Court, also in The Hague, which handles war crimes cases against individuals. The ICJ deals with disputes between states. That's often about borders, but increasingly includes cases by countries accusing others of breaking UN treaty obligations. Gambia, for example, brought an ongoing genocide case against Myanmar in 2019 over the latter's treatment of the Rohingya minority group. South Africa's 84-page filing accuses Israel of committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. It's doing this, South Africa claims, by killing them, causing serious mental and bodily harm, and by creating conditions on life, quote, calculated to bring about their physical destruction. South Africa, which has a long history of supporting the Palestinian cause, also alleges that Israel has failed to curb incitement to genocide by its own officials, in violation of the Genocide Convention. Israel has called the claim baseless and said it will present its case in court. A government spokesman accused South Africa of an absurd blood libel. Israel began its bombardment of Gaza following Hamas's October 7th cross-border rampage, in which, according to Israeli officials, 1,200 people were killed. The Israeli military says it tries to avoid harm to civilians, but blames Hamas for embedding fighters within residential areas, something the group denies. Palestinian health officials say the Israeli offensive has so far killed more than 23,000 Palestinians in Gaza. The ICJ hearing on January the 11th and 12th will deal with a request by South Africa for provisional measures, including ordering Israel to suspend its military campaign in Gaza. Such measures are designed to prevent dispute from getting worse, while the court looks at the full case. The ICJ's rulings are final and without appeal, but it has no way of enforcing them. However, a ruling against Israel could hurt its international reputation and set a legal precedent. There are several hoops to jump through before a full case could be heard. The ICJ needs to find that it has prima facie jurisdiction, after which Israel would get another chance to argue the court has no grounds to look at South Africa's claim. It is not unusual for several years to pass between the initial claim and the actual hearing of the case on its merits.
That was David Doyle of Reuters reporting. Mali begins their AFCON Group E campaign against South Africa on Saturday. They will also meet Tunisia and Namibia in the group stage. Injury hit Mali have named and capped Wolverhampton Wanderers midfielder Boubacar Traoré and Lorient striker Sirine Doucouré to their squad for this month's African Cup of Nations. And joining me here in studio with more on what to expect is VOA reporter Check Tiero. Check, let's start off with which teams are in the opening match and what chances do they have to win?
Esther, the opening match, we have Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Guinea-Bissau, and Guinea Equatorial, and the organizing country is going to open up with Guinea-Bissau on Saturday the 13th, and everybody looking forward for Ivory Coast to carry on and have a big victory because they're playing home.
Oh, so they're familiar with their territory, so you think they're likely to win this. So how many teams are we talking about here, and how many games in total?
We're talking about approximately 52 games, and there's 24 teams, and dispatches in six groups, and everybody have to play at least 4 games each other, and the 3 qualified people from each group will move on to the next stage. We are looking to 52 games for this tournament that's happening in Ivory Coast right now, and 6 different stadiums.
Now, this is a big event for Africa, but also it's in West Africa, and one wonders what an event like this might portend for the continent when you think about the geopolitical issues that have happened in terms of insecurity and several coups in West Africa.
All right. It's very interesting, Esther. Everybody knows sports, the only thing that bring people together. And it's been a moment in Africa right now when it's all these problems, like you say, but it's also the only event that bring like thousands of people on the street and happy just because their country won a game. So we really think like this is going to be a chance for country, especially in the Western area, West African area to come together and put everything on the side, which we see with sports evolution as across the years. But we also see some countries have conflict, like Ivory Coast and the country that have coup, and the coup is not accepted by Ivory Coast, but they're going to play soccer there. So this might be a reconciliation through this sports, which is sports background on anything, because it's fair play. It's called, we all speak the same language. So I think it's going to be very good for the geopolitical issue in the area. And I also think everybody's going to chip in to make sure this thing's going to be the best tournament and come and put the differences on side and come on and have a good tournament.
I like that because I think sports really brings people together regardless
absolutely.
of whatever background. But what more should we expect from this year's tournament?
This year's tournament, we should expect some surprising because we saw Senegal took it last year, and hopefully this year the fans really want a Sahel team to win it because African young people are really looking to the Sahel countries a lot, and so they think if they win the championship, it will change the dynamic in those Sahel countries, which is Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Senegal had it last year, but do not forget the Maghreb countries. Morocco is very good, Algeria, Egypt, all those countries. South Africa, Tanzania came in, so it's going to be a lot of teams that's going to be very great to watch. It's going to be surprising teams in this tournament.
We'll be watching. Thank you so much, Cheikh.
Yeah, thank you. Yep.
Cheikh Tiero with that AFCON preview. Still to come, how Tanzania is actively working to reduce the gender gap in its rapidly growing tech industry. Stay with us. Bring the ball.
This week on Straight Talk Africa. South Africa launches a case at the International Court of Justice in The Hague, alleging that Israel's military campaign in Gaza amounts to genocide. At the heart of the case is the 1948 Geneva Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Why is South Africa spearheading this effort? Join me, Heidi Adams, and my guests for an in-depth discussion on the case.
Hey folks, I'm Luckville Yabaro, and I have some electrifying news for you. AFCON 2023 is here, and I'll be at Ivory Coast covering all things AFCON for VOA Africa. We'll have exciting coverage on radio, TV, and all of our digital platforms. Make sure you check out voaafrica.com for AFCON updates. Stay locked right here on VOA Africa.
In other news, global diamond giant De Beers says it is moving forward with a planned $1 billion investment to extend the life of its flagship Jwaneng mine in Botswana. The Anglo-American unit and the Botswana government, which jointly own Botswana Diamond Company, have approved the spending that will convert the Jwaneng pit into an underground operation. Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema has signed an access to information law more than 20 years after it was first introduced in Parliament. Under the new law, every citizen can request unclassified information from the government on any issue of public interest. Some are welcoming the move, but rights activists say the measure still falls short of international standards. And Morocco won a vote on Wednesday to lead the United Nations Human Rights Council following a heated showdown with South Africa that left the two nations debating over fitness to preside over the human rights body. Morocco received 30 votes and South Africa secured 17 in a secret ballot in Geneva. The annual Consumer Electronics Show is underway in Las Vegas, and a wide range of innovations are being showcased. And for more, I'm joined live by VOA reporter Tina Trin. Tina, welcome to Africa 54. There's so much happening where you are. Tell us what's trending.
Hi, Esther. Thank you. I'm at the CES 2024 Consumer Electronics Show, which, used to be called the Consumer Electronics Show, but it has since been named just CES. And that really is a nod to how this show has evolved over the years. From not just HD big screen TVs and laptops and phones, to really AI and technology touching nearly every aspect of life. There are so many exhibitors here, over 4,000 reportedly, and 1,200 of those are startups. So to say the show is massive is a huge understatement. It's spread across 12 different venues, covering over 185,000 square meters, with expected numbers of 130,000 in attendance. So it's quite overwhelming.
I can imagine. Now, we hear AI is dominating everything. It's center stage there. What kind of technology are you seeing there, and who are the major players in this consumers event?
Well, some of the major players are kind of unexpected companies. And I was talking to a startup CEO yesterday, and he expressed the sentiment that these days, nearly every company is a tech company. And it's so true when you look across the board at the exhibitors here. Companies like makeup company L'Oreal, which you wouldn't think as a tech company, but actually is showcasing a computerized makeup applicator for portions of the population who may experience tremors in their hands, now be able to apply their makeup steadily with this device. And AI really is becoming even more invisible. In decades past, you had a lot of wearable devices, and you still have that. But more and more, you're seeing these AI technologies be implemented into devices that are in the background. I saw, for example, yesterday, a home health monitor, which is a small device that you can attach to a wall in a home to monitor seniors or the elderly who are aging in case they fall, or in case there are changes in their heart rate. So all these vital signs can be monitored without having to wear a device, very much so in the background, unnoticeable. So we're going to see more and more interesting technologies all this week. CES runs until Friday, and just expect the next big thing.
Tina, I can't wait. You're our eyes there, so we'll be back on this. Tina Trin, thank you very much for your reporting from Las Vegas there in Nevada. It's time for our technology segment, and joining us now is our tech reporter, Paul Ndiho. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Esther. Women hold only 25% of tech jobs in Tanzania, and just 10% of students earning degrees in computer science are women, according to data taken from the Tanzanian Communications Regulatory Authority, actively working to reduce the gap between its rapidly growing tech industry. I spoke with Pelagia Njau, a broadcast engineer at Azam TV, who teaches girls how to code and gives them a chance to shape their future in the tech industry. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much, Paul.
You are one of those young and upcoming techies in Tanzania. You've been covering this topic. You do so much around young people in Tanzania. Tell us a little bit about what does technology mean for a lot of young people?
For Tanzanian young people, they're really trying to innovate different things across Tanzania. And especially for speaking of innovation with softwares, innovation and all that. But I really appreciate somehow the government of Tanzania is really trying to encourage them, is really trying to fund them in one or another. For instance, we have the so-called COSTECH. It's a hub used to promote, to encourage young innovators from Tanzania. So young people, they're really trying to do a lot in order to innovate different things across Tanzania. So speaking of technology in Tanzania, we are really growing day by day. We can say in previous time, it wasn't the same as it is for now.
How are women involved in this? Are there a lot of young women who are trying to learn a few things in this space to be part of this technological revolution that is happening across the world?
I will say women participation, especially in tech space, is really low compared to men. As we know, most of the women, they find like this technical stuff, technical issues is something very challenging, and they find it's very difficult. So from us, like from this program, we're really trying to reach, especially young ladies. We need to build a foundation, like in secondary school or primary school, so that they can be interested for future. So a large number of people who are doing these technical issues are men. So we're trying to encourage women to participate in this program.
What's trending in terms of technology when it comes to how people are using it in Tanzania?
They used to develop softwares of which it helps us to do some of the things. As we know, internet connectivity in some of the areas is really a problem. So, for instance, there are some softwares which you can access content without the use of internet. So, I will say like young people, they're really trying to innovate. They're really trying to do something so that all people in different areas, they can be like it can be helpful for them to use them. Like when you say like let's say it's a software development, software innovation. This software, to access anything, most of the softwares you need internet. But in Tanzania, most of the people, they like in remote areas, they really don't understand most of the technological things. But young innovators, they're really trying to improve in different areas across Tanzania.
You recently led the team to introduce a new software called Kiwix in Tanzania. How are young people receiving that software? What can it do to help people, especially in rural communities?
For Tanzania this year, it was the time for us to introduce it in different areas. But we're glad that young people, they find it, they receive it in a positive way, because in school, let's say universities or secondary schools, they'll be able to access like a Wikipedia or any other site, open site with no internet. So we are introducing that software to different areas, especially for university. They receive it in a positive way, because before that, they never thought like you can access content with no internet. They thought like everything on a website, you need internet to access that. So we're trying, especially in rural areas, as we know, internet connectivity is a problem in rural areas. So we are trying to reach different people, especially in rural areas, as connectivity is a problem. So this thing, and we are hoping that as time goes on, most of the people, they'll be aware of this software, and I think it will be helpful for them in one way or another, especially for studies and all that.
How big is the internet penetration in Tanzania?
Internet in urban areas, like in town, internet connectivity is not that much a big problem, but for rural areas, it's a challenge.
Well, on that note, I thank you so much, Peggy.
You're welcome.
That's today's Tech Report. Back to you, Esther.
Thanks, Paul. Be sure to join Paul Ndiho every Wednesday for another tech segment right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.